Hi guys and girls, I'm doing another video on my Focus ST. Before we drive off, I'll just show you proof of power from my dyno run. Revo Developments dyno. Yeah, it's peak power and torque. 360 foot-pounds, nearest damn it. Let's get going. I bought this car about a year ago. Had a series of Discoveries and Range Rovers. I thought it was time to have something a little bit sporty. So looking around for some value for money. Focus ST seemed to be the one to go for. 221 horsepower. Sounds like fun to me. So I had a look around, and one popped up about 10 minutes from where I live. So I went and looked at it, took it out for a spin, and bought it. It was a lot cleaner than this. So we're in Dorset, the roads are muddy. I can't be asked to wash it. So I just wanted to put a car. I had no intention of modifying it. So we got it home, stored and everything, and drove it around. It was, yeah, it was quick. I mean, I'd had quick cars before. I've had the A3 Quattro 3.2. I mean, that was fast but boring, quite heavy. But this was lightning bolt. It was like driving a little go-kart around the corners. Little driver's car. After a while, it started squealing from the engine bay, which turned out to be an exhaust gasket manifold. And at that time, I'd also looked into the reliability of these cars and the cracked liner issue and the block mod. Block mod is where they put shims down between the liners to stop them cracking. Whether it works, whether it doesn't, we don't know. It's a bit contentious, but I thought this would be something I'd like to get done. So I had a look around on the internet, and I've been watching BD Performance and those guys are great. I think if they weren't so far away, I would have used them. Well, hell of a way from me. Then there was another guy down Plymouth called MJP Performance, sorry. And they do good work, but they like to have the car, and they have it for quite a long time. They seem to be very thorough. So the other people that popped up was Revo Developments, and I gave them a ring first, and they said, yeah, we can do the block mod. And I said, what about stage 1 remap while we're there? And they said, well, you might as well go straight for stage 2, because if you get stage 1 done, you'll get bored straight away. So you can go for stage 2, so you might as well only pay once. So yeah, got it booked in. They couldn't do it for about 6 weeks, so in that time I got an AirTech intercooler, stage 1 Gen 3, Gen 4, I don't know, fitted that. It had already had ram air induction kit, forged dump valve, and an RS clutch and flywheel fitted, so it was ready for some extra power. I think the brakes had new front calipers, and I'm pretty sure it's got buybacks on it because it is bloody low. So yeah, also did a decat with an oxygen sensor spacer to try and stop the engine light coming on, but it doesn't really work. It still comes on about every 300 or 400 miles, but we got an OBD machine at work. I just turned it off there. Yeah, and I did the D-Res as well. Yeah, so it's a bit raughty. And, you know, you don't need to spend all this money on this fancy exhaust and stuff. You can buy the decap pipe, it's about 20 quid. D-Res pipe's about 15 quid. You know? So these cars you can modify on a budget. So I took it down to Revo Developments. They took me down to be down there for 9 o'clock. So I got down there about 8:30, and then they all started turning up. To be honest with you, they did tell me they had a waiting room, and it was in their office, a tiny little office, a pissy little chair. I thought they might have had a nice waiting room or something. So I sat in this chair for about an hour. The car just stayed outside. So I went off into town, got some brekkie, came back. The car still hadn't moved. Sat there for another hour. I went out, had a wander around, came back about 3 hours later, and they'd started. But they seemed to be leaving it quite late in the day. And there were two guys on it, and they smoked it, but I think, you know, they rushed it a bit, to be fair. But when it was done, they put it on the dyno standard map, and it made a healthy 240 horsepower and 250 foot-pounds of torque just on the mods I'd done. So I was pretty impressed with that, to be fair. And then they put on their stage 2 Revo software, and yeah, dynoed it again. As you can see on the dyno sheet, it made 292 horsepower and 360, almost 360 foot-pounds of torque, which at the time, unbeknown to me, was done with the variable valve timing not working properly. So drove it home. It's just a different car. This is just it's a great fun. I think this is a perfect sort of, you know, compromise. In the dry, it's awesome. If it's slippery, if it's icy, if it's wet, there's absolutely no point. You just will drive on steady, because if you have the traction control on, it just cuts the engine, and if you have it off, in the rain it will spin in 4th gear, no trouble. Yeah, so it's really a drive by the car. In fair, so it hasn't got the fancy diff in it like the RS. But yeah, I drove it on for a few months and did about 2,500 miles in it, and noticed that there was oil around the top of the rocker cover. And on further investigation, I took the plastics off, and there was oil pissing out of the cam seal straight onto the cam belt. So I looked at the Devil Developments guarantee, and it was like 1,000 miles per month or something like that. So no point ringing them up. So I rang my local garage up, NJT, Nathan Tight. I can't recommend him enough. He's a brilliant guy if you're in the Dorset area. And yeah, he did the job. He fitted the new cam seals, and which were leaking. Also, the cam sensors on top of the rocker cover were leaking as well. And when he took them out, when they were fitted, instead of the O-ring being around the outside of the sensor, it had been crushed down underneath the sensor. So the belt time wasn't working. So yeah, he did that, new cam belts, and all the pulleys had been done already by Devil, and water pump. Yeah, so in his eyes, he thinks I'm probably getting some horsepower because the timing wasn't quite working properly. So maybe it is closer to the speed, not necessarily a lot smoother. And what it is, what it was before, I found the map quite aggressive. Now it's just smoothed out nice, and it's just how I run that through. I was out in May, and I was obviously on the private road in Mexico, and AMG Mercedes come up behind me, going in there and everything. This car would definitely redline in top gear. Unlike the unmapped versions that tend to run out of puff at 5,500, 5,000, it just keeps going. It's a brilliant map. So in terms of cost, this car, I spent, including buying the car, I spent about $5 grand on it, and this would be quicker than a standard RS Mark II because it's got about 40 foot-pounds more torque. And excuse me, let me just turn this off a minute. Sorry about this. Yeah. So in terms of value for money and great fun, it's ace. Don't expect it to return. Very good MPG. It is yeah, a bit thirsty. Yeah. So I think in future, if I had any more work done to it, I would take it to BD Performance. Just because of their reputation, or get my local dealer, just my local garage NJT to do anything. Because to be honest with you, £100 devil to go than being I felt like I was an annoyance to them. Bearing in mind I was there all day, I never got offered a cup of tea or coffee or anything. They were pleasant, but they didn't really want to spend much time speaking to me. And they had the opportunity, because I was the only other customer there, and they all went off and ordered this massive McDonald's. And you think, oh, do you think they just offered me a coffee or something like that? But no. So I was disappointed. NGAT, when he took the car apart, he said although they'd used quality parts, it looked like it had been rushed. Yeah, the cam seals weren't in correctly. One of them was in on the piss. So yeah, maybe they was just having an off day. I'm not gonna, slate them completely, which is quite a lot. Standard internals. Might want to go for a ductile liner as well if you want to go more. Gearbox is good. It's a gear track 6, and they're good for 6 or 700 horsepower, so you ain't got to worry about that. I've done a service on mine anyway. I think the thing with these is not to pull off hard in first gear, maybe in second, because of the drive shafts. I don't see why anybody needs more horsepower on this. I think without trick diff, you just can't get it to hook up. I can't get this to hook up half the time. So, around these corners. Just got to put over the hedge. Always these things ends as well. Mate took his Mark 2X off my rear years ago. Got from some wheels and drove it home. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, even subscribe.